Right, it's time to discuss what went down with Gareth Southgate. How are you, all right?
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah.
Are you ready to look back at a time when we were hugging each other, we had thousands of people in football stadiums?
God, I miss hugging.
Smiles on our faces, I know. We'll get to do it again one day. Let's look through a series of photos and we'll just kind of talk about really what comes to mind. I mean, there is your squad from the World Cup. Was there a moment where you sort of thought this is a team with the potential to make a World Cup semi-final, or do you very much exist in a day-by-day, game-by-game mindset at a major tournament?
Well, I think we had to be that way. As we look back at that team now, sort of two years on, there are some, you know, Harry Maguire's captain of Manchester United, but he only had 4 or 5 international caps. Pickford only had 4 or 5 international caps going into that tournament. Kieran Trippier really early stages. So we weren't really sure how they were going to react under the pressure of the tournament. Not only the players that had come in, but also the players who had been performing well, but their previous tournament had ended in disappointment, and how would they cope with the pressure? So I don't think we thought they were a semi-final team until we were 2-0 up against Sweden in the quarter-final with about 5 minutes to go.
And how much do you allow your mind to sort of race on to finals and World Cups and all that sort of stuff? Or were you very controlled in your own thinking as well?
I think always well, not just myself as manager, but all of the staff around the team, you know that as soon as you take your eye off the next game, the next 20 minutes, the next day's training, then you're lost, because your experiences in football tell you that any time you weren't 100% focused or ready or prepared, then you lose the game.
So that really is the mindset. That's not just a sort of public message. That really is your mindset.
100%.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about the route, I suppose, to that semi-final. Let's talk about the Tunisia game, first of all. The way the game ended, in terms of winning it late, the belief for the players and the fans, and for you personally, would have been quite important, I imagine. I
think was the key result in the whole tournament. I remember 2010, first game was a draw with USA. 2014, a good performance against Italy, and they lost late on. And the pressure that builds when you don't get that first result or the first win sometimes is too much. And what pleased me most was that we were patient that day in the way that we played. We kept trying to create good chances rather than we got anxious and we were just throwing the ball in the box. In the end, attention to detail on set plays got us the goals. But it was you're right, it was a critical point in the belief of the team, and in the end it meant we qualified from the group by half-time of the second game, rather than we were hanging on and having to play Belgium in the third game of the group, needing a point to go through. So.
I mean, it felt like Panama was that perfect second game in the group. I do want to talk, though, about that Belgium game. We were all talking back here in the UK, you wouldn't have been aware because you were away at the tournament, about the sort of complexity of the result having a big determining factor on who you faced in the knockout stages. Now that you reflect on it, you know, a couple of years later, do you still believe that you just went into the game to try and win it, or was it a distraction that the loser got a decent draw?
Well, we didn't know exactly what that would look like until 3 hours before the game, because Japan and Colombia were still playing their group matches. So when we had to select the team, our decision was based on, we know we've qualified and we know that our next game is our most important. So we wanted to rest as many of the starting 11 as we could so that they would be fresh for the knockout game. To worry about who our quarter-final would be, which was the choice that people were making. Well, you play Brazil that way or you play Sweden that way. We were thinking, let's not worry about 2 games' time. Let's just focus on winning the first one, because we might not even get to the quarter-final. So it actually made our decision straightforward, that to protect the squad, to make sure we didn't get injuries to big players was the decision. And I think rotating the team is key, not just because it means that physically your players are in a better position, but the squad and the guys that haven't started matches, they get the chance to play in a World Cup, and they come home having played in a World Cup, and feeling a bigger part of the squad over the next few days. And you need that energy from the group that aren't starting in the main matches.
And eventually this is where it led us to. When you see a picture there of that game against Colombia, what does it remind you of?
That it was a bit of a war.
Yeah, just a bit.
What I liked was that maybe historically we haven't been savvy. You know, we've played South American teams, we've been to tournaments, had players sent off, we've reacted in the wrong way to incidents on the pitch, we haven't been calm in those moments. And there were lots of incidents like this where the referee was under huge pressure, where we didn't react to events that happened and get a red card. And we talked about that a lot as a team over the 2 years leading in. And then, you know, the penalty that was given in normal time, I think Harry Kane, I think it was something like 2.5 minutes between it being awarded until he actually got to take the kick. And within that time, if you ever watch it back, you know, there are people scuffing the penalty spot up, he's being dragged around, there's people in his ear all the time, there's people on the referee. It's a fantastic example of an individual player performing under pressure.
Your emotion watching that happen? Did you have full confidence?
Yeah, with Harry, always confident because we see him practice so well. And you know that he'll have given himself, by his preparation during the week and his routine, he'll give himself the best chance of scoring. No player will score 10 out of 10 penalties. I think even the best in the world is like 75–80% success rate. But you know that he'll score, you know, the vast majority.
You wouldn't have wanted the equaliser, but actually in hindsight it meant that your England team and you got to go through this remarkable moment where for you it was kind of vindication for what happened for you personally from a penalty spot a number of years before. For your players it was the opportunity to remove that constant narrative that England don't win penalty shootouts. It was a chance to overcome South American opposition. It actually ended up being a good thing because of the way that eventually it all panned out.
Yeah, if certain beers did World Cup, you know, knockout match wins, this is what they'd do it. Because if you knew you were going to win that way, you would choose that way every time, actually, or you'd choose a last-minute goal. That's not how it feels going through the whole process. And at the end of it, actually, although there was the elation, everybody was drained. You know, it was such a long day with so much brain power needed by everybody. But you're right, to break that barrier for not just this team, but teams that will play in the future. You know, we then won a knockout penalty shootout in the Nations League, so not quite as high profile, but we've now won 2, where we were 1 out of 7. We're now 3 out of 7, and that belief starts to build for future players that might be in that position.
And where does the memory of that game sit for you?
Well, I think it's, you know, it's probably as good a night as I've had in football. Certainly as a manager, I mean, I'm still early stages of a managerial career, really, sort of 200 odd matches, but I think that barrier of a knockout and that barrier of a penalty shootout was so important to get through. And just to be, it was one of those classic England nights that often go the other way. You know, I was involved in St Etienne when Argentina beat us for the night Beckham went off. Obviously had my own experiences in Euro 96. We've seen those quarter-finals that Sven had against Portugal. Those big England nights are nights where people always remember where they are, and to be on the right side of one. You know, I was on the right side of one when we beat the Dutch in '96, which was brilliant. But yeah, they're special when you win, that's for sure.
And then Sweden was kind of very different because we went into this as overwhelming favourites and got the job done.
Yeah, I mean, it was bizarre because the quarter-final felt for both teams, we'd both had tough games 2 days earlier and incredible heat in Samara leading into the game. And I knew our record against Sweden was really poor. Tournament-wise over the years, very poor record. They always play 4-4-2, or have done historically, and we've never found a way to beat that. But actually, the system we were playing in a 3-5-2 was perfectly set up to keep the ball against them and to deal with their long balls as well. So although there was a period in the second half where Jordan Pickford had to make a couple of good saves, it felt a reasonably calm night. I mean, I suppose after the penalties 3 nights before anything would, but for a quarter final, it was a fairly calm and convincing win, really.
And then, of course, it's the Croatia game. The way that you have to be, because you are still the England manager, is you have to sort of compartmentalise the highs and the lows and move on. So 2 years after this, what have you learned from that Croatia game, and how do you reflect on it?
Yeah, I think firstly that we needed to be able to adapt the way that we played. So, you know, you'd be stupid to come out of a defeat like that and say, oh, we'd do everything exactly the same way. I think there were some tactical issues that we had in the second half of the match that you might react to more quickly. And we will never know if those changes would have had the effect, because, for example, if we'd taken a player out of midfield to stop their right back advancing so often, we'd have been overloaded in midfield, which was Rakitic, Modric, and so you would definitely have tried to change tactically in a different way. I would look back on that. I think our team's evolved now, and we played a system that really suited the team that we had and gave our defenders, who were relatively inexperienced in that tournament, it gave them time to bed into international football. But now we've got wide players who create so many problems, and we've got depth in those areas of the pitch that we've been able to evolve the way we play as a team. So I think there are some things in life you have to go through as a team to learn from.
And as an individual.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think the more games that you manage, the more tournaments that you go to, you learn from every experience that you're involved with. And
I know that Euro 2020's turned into Euro 2021. When it finally rolls around after another 12-month wait, does the waistcoat come out again?
That's the biggest question of all, isn't it? Never mind who plays, yeah. I mean, I really don't know.
I think it might do. I advise you to get the waistcoat out again.
I'm conscious in a strange way, it sort of became a symbol for the fans. Correct. And in a way, you shouldn't underestimate those things. Whether I feel comfortable in it, actually, it was something that people reacted to, and bringing the fans on the journey with the team is such an important part of what we have to do as a manager.
Wonderful. Well, look, it's been lovely to sit and chat with you. I suppose that actually, in hindsight, despite the fact that we didn't win the tournament, that England team has left a bit of a legacy for investing in youth, for winning a penalty shootout, and actually for showing that we can be this close to competing in the final on the biggest stage of all. And let's take the positives and see where that takes us.
Thank you.